Did you know that you can buy a note secured by real estate and how profitable it can be? All of that and more right here, right now in the Homebuyer Town Hall, Florida. Welcome to the Homebuyer Town Hall. My name is Adriana Montes, CEO of Florida Dreams and Capital Group. I'm here today at the IMN Servicing Non-Performing Loans Conference. It's here in Orlando, actually. We're close to the convention center, which is the background that I have right now behind me, right here. So we are at the Hyatt Regency, have this conference, which is a sponsor and is created by IMN. And I'm delighted to have one of my dearest friends and attorney as well, and very well known in this industry with me today. We're going to talk about non-performing notes. We're going to talk about the foreclosure industry and the whole process since a loan gets originated all the way through when it stops performing, meaning people are not paying the home, and then what happens if you have to go through foreclosure. This is in regards to the default industry. And I'm so happy to have one of my dearest friends and colleagues and also an attorney from Chicago. His name is Eric Feldman from Eric Feldman Law Firm. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So in sunny Florida, we are here for this conference, as Adriana mentioned, and I operate a law firm in Chicago that's focused on real estate. And the firm is basically handles transactional work related to real estate, buying and selling property, buying and selling loans, buying and selling businesses. And then we do a litigation component, which is mostly related to real estate. So foreclosure work, evictions, bankruptcy related to real estate. And then we also do corporate work. So people want to set up an entity in order to invest in real estate or loans or things like that. We also do that kind of work. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Eric, so much for giving us all of this background about yourself and your firm. Also, we'd like you to share your contact information so our audience can reach you. And I heard that you're in several states. So if you want to share that information as well.
Sure. We operate in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, and we handle the entire state, but we are based in Chicago. So if anyone does want to contact us, the website is EFALAW. So Eric Feldman and Associates Law, basically EFALaw.com.
Thank you, Eric. I'm sure that you're so happy to be here. I heard that right now Chicago is super cold, and I mean, what a better place to be than the Sunshine State, Florida, the real Sunshine State. So let's talk about what a note is. How do you become involved into this industry? You want to teach us, what this conference is really about and how our listeners can learn and can actually educate on how they can make money on notes, or at least start understanding the topic.
Sure. Well, let's see. Let's rewind for a minute. So a promissory note. A promissory note is a promise to pay. So I owe you, things like that, fairly straightforward and simple. And there are various terms associated with a promissory note. The notes that you can have notes in different forms. So for instance, I could borrow money from a relative or a friend and say, I owe you this much, I'll pay you back in a month or 6 months or a year. Those are probably the vast majority of loans are sort of, short-term type of loans and between friends and family. However, when you're getting into the business of promissory notes and you want to have a little bit more security, you'd have a note that's secured by real estate, which is also a promissory note. So it's a promise to pay under certain circumstances. Everybody who gets they call it a mortgage, but a mortgage isn't really what it is. It's a promissory note. I owe someone money, a bank typically. I'm going to pay it in 30 years at 5% interest under various terms. So the mortgage is the security instrument against the note, which is then reported with the county typically in different jurisdictions. So when people buy loans, which happens all the time, actually most people will go and they'll go buy a house and they'll get a note in a mortgage. That mortgage is typically sold immediately. Actually, while you're sitting at the closing table, it's already have been negotiated to sell to somebody else. So, and then we can divide these notes into performing and non-performing. So, many loans perform. The vast majority are ones that are performing. They're being sold to banks, to various investors, to different countries, to all kinds of things. So, and those are performing loans. We happen to be at this conference, which talks about non-performing loans. So ones that have gone into default in some fashion. So maybe they were just 1 month late, 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And then the bank or the investor says, well, you know what, I don't really want to take the risk. I don't know how to deal with this. I'm not really in the position of dealing with something that's not performing. So I'm going to go find somebody to buy it so I can reduce my risk or eliminate my risk potentially in dealing with this investment and cash out. So there are various marketplaces in order to buy and sell loans. It is a little bit, it's not like the multiple listing service for property, but there are some databases or some companies out there that do sell them, but a lot of it is really relationship based. So there's a handful of people. The investors and banks want to be able to sell a lot of them at one time, typically. So that's often not one note here, one note there. It's usually, hey, I've got 100 loans, I've got 200 or 1,000 loans that are all non-performing, and they want to sell them. So people do trade in this industry with respect to it.
What a great explanation, Eric. I loved how you explained it. You laid it out perfectly. So basically, a loan gets originated. Somebody needs to buy a house, and then that loan gets sold to a servicing company that is actually making interest for investors or for themselves. And then as you service that note, then at some point it becomes performing, which means people are paying as instructed on the terms, or they don't perform and it becomes a non-performing loan, which is what we are mainly talking about. And then that's what starts kind of the default process. And then the servicer starts working with the client to do a loan modification or some kind of workout. But if it doesn't happen, then that eventually will become a foreclosure. And then that's where we have REOs, foreclosure on properties. And that's basically the cycle of that industry. So I appreciate how you laid that out so well. So in terms of being a real estate investor, how do you buy a note and what are the risks involved?
So while there are a lot of places to find notes, one good place is a conference like this. And there are probably a handful during a year where people are trading and talking about non-performing loans, and not just buying and selling, but all of the components associated with dealing with them. So that would include due diligence. So not just finding them, but making sure that you have all the tools in place in order to deal with it. And then if you do need to go down the path of foreclosure or eviction, that you have resources and so forth to deal with it. So that's what this conference is about. All of those components, not just buying and selling, but what happens once you purchase one or sell one.
That's so true, Eric. And networking is key. I was talking to some guy yesterday here, some investor, and he was telling me how he bought this note it was an expensive property, 1.1 million. Property is worth 2 million. And now he had to foreclose on them, and he has it under contract now for 1.7. So that is a great, obviously there is a lot of risk when you put all of that capital out there. But that's just an example of, what you can do when you buy notes, and depending what kind of risk you want to tolerate, how much entry level, and how much money you want to enter with. But those are kind of some of the examples that you can find. And I was networking, and networking is key in this business and in any business. So thank you so much for sharing that. And as you speak about the risk associated with buying a non-performing loan, we're going to, if it doesn't perform, well, obviously you want your investment to perform, so you have to do something about it. So the way to do something about it is to get your capital back, and you get the property back by foreclosing. Eric, so talk to us about a foreclosure process, how property becomes REO, all of that process that takes, and I'm sure that you have a lot of experience in different states, and you network with so many colleagues around the country. So I would love to hear about that after this foreclosure break. Thank you for watching the Homebuyer Town Hall Florida. We'll be right back.
The Power Is Now magazines are the leading resource for real estate agents, mortgage bankers, entrepreneurs, and small home ownership businesses, providing leaders with business strategy information, resources, and tools through PIN, Real Estate, Programming Guide magazines. Stay up to the minute with real estate news and information from industry experts. Subscription is free. Sign up today. ThePowerisNow.com. ThePowerisNow.com.